When the brutal McAllister brothers beat 14-year-old Mason, they thought they'd sent a warning. What they didn't know was that his mother, Harper, doesn't beg for protection. She becomes it. With a rifle, a map, and a promise, she disappeared into the woods where no laws could reach. But just wait until you see how this story turns, and why justice, in the end, came like a storm. The air cut like glass. On the outskirts of Redding, Montana, winter blanketed the land in silence. But out here, silence didn't mean peace. It meant no one was coming. They called her Harper. She hadn't asked to lead. Life gave her no choice. When her husband died in a logging accident 2 winters ago, grief had to wait. She had 3 kids and no one else. So she taught herself to starve if it meant they ate. Their cabin sat high in the hills, past the last paved road, where wolves howled at dusk, and people stopped caring. But it wasn't the wolves she feared. It was the McAllister brothers. 3 of them. Locals who hunted more for pleasure than meat. They'd inherited their father's land and his cruelty. One day, Harper's daughter found a wolf pup gutted and nailed to a tree. That was their way of saying hello. Still, Harper stood her ground. She met Clyde McAllister at the fence line, rifle slung but untouched, and told him to stay off her land. He just grinned. "You got no rights up here," he said. "This ain't the city. Out here, we make the rules." That night, her generator was shot. Next night, the coop. Every hen dead, their bodies left like warnings. Her youngest, Eli, cried until he was hoarse. Then came the moment that shattered all illusion. Harper came home from town and saw Mason, her oldest, limping through the snow, blood down his cheek, one eye nearly shut. She ran to him, heart in her throat. He wouldn't speak at first. Then, quiet as a falling leaf, "They grabbed me near the creek." A pause. "Said it was just a warning." Hatred didn't crash over her all at once. It seeped in, slow and steady, like sap warming inside bark at the end of a long freeze. Quiet, thick, inevitable. Harper didn't call the sheriff. What would be the point? He played poker with the McAllister brothers every Friday night, sitting across the table from the very men who hurt her son. His badge might shine, but it never made it up these hills. So, that night, after the children were asleep, Harper climbed into the attic. The dust smelled like old smoke and cedar. She reached behind the beams, her fingers finding the worn canvas of an Army-issue duffel Caleb had tucked away long ago, just in case the world ever stopped pretending to be fair. Inside, time had stayed still. A hunting rifle, still oiled. A hand-drawn map of back trails and blind spots, and a blade, long, curved, and quiet. This wasn't rage. It wasn't even revenge. It was protection. A mother's answer to a line crossed too many times. At first light, she packed a small bundle of food for the kids, cans, jerky, peanut butter, and walked them down to the Dwyer's cabin, nearly a mile away. She left a note with Mrs. Dwyer, folded twice. "If I'm not back by Sunday," it read, "call Rachel in Billings." Rachel was her sister, the kind who believed in laws and courtrooms, but Harper had already stood at the edge of that faith and watched it fall. Then she turned back to the woods. She moved like wind through birch. No sound, no second thoughts. She knew the bends in the creek where deer paused to drink, where the earth grew soft under boot, where frost didn't fully take hold beneath pine. This was her home, her terrain, her rules now. The first trap was simple. Wire stretched low between trunks, tension to snap. She baited it with the scent of blood from the hens they'd slaughtered. It was more than lure. It was memory. The second was older. A snare she'd learned from an Ojibwe veteran who used to sit behind the bait shop telling stories nobody believed, until they needed them. But tonight, it wasn't bears she was waiting for. It was men who never thought they'd be hunted. Clyde came first. Heavy boots, too loud, laughing about something only he could hear. He didn't see the loop in the snow, not until the tension took his leg out from under him, and the forest lit up with a sound no animal makes. His scream carried. The trees held it for a while before letting it go. Ryan showed up soon after, younger, bolder, and carrying a shotgun like a trophy he hadn't earned. She didn't give him time to lift it. One round hit his shoulder, spinning him. The second dropped him to his knees. He cried out, confused more than hurt, as if he couldn't understand how a woman in a coat 2 sizes too big had outmatched him in his own woods. She left him there, not out of mercy, but because some losses don't need more than silence. The last one, Everett, tried to disappear. He ran blind into the forest, hoping darkness would spare him. She didn't chase him. He was found at dawn, curled in a gully, eyes wide, skin pale, breath trembling. Not injured, just changed. He'd seen something. Not a ghost, not a monster, just a mother who stopped asking for help and started making sure no one ever touched her children again. When Harper walked back into town, twilight followed her like a shadow. Her boots were caked with half-frozen mud, and her coat, once brown, now carried the colors of the forest, smudges of pine, soil, and dusk. Her face was calm, still, but her eyes held something you couldn't look at for too long. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. People noticed. Of course they did. They saw her pass the old diner, the church steps, the sheriff's office with its porch light still flickering in the dark. And though no sirens had sounded and no one had knocked on their doors, the townsfolk knew. Something had shifted in the trees. Ryan McAllister was already in custody by then, found near the mill road, stumbling, half-conscious, muttering about a woman made of wind and fire. His injuries weren't life-threatening, but his voice was. Every word he spoke chipped away at the reputation the McAllisters had ruled with for years. Clyde was gone. Not missing, gone. His jacket, bloodied and ripped, was found dangling from a pine branch, too high to reach without a ladder. No one knew how it got there. No one wanted to ask. Everett, the quietest of the three, left a voicemail on the sheriff's phone at 4:17 a.m. His words were slurred but clear enough. A confession, if anyone wanted to call it that. "We pushed her too far," he said. "Hurt her boy. She told us to stop." Then a pause, and static. After that, silence. Sheriff Billings sat in his chair and listened to the recording with tired eyes. Then, without expression, he erased it. No press, no paperwork. Just 4 words mumbled to himself. Let the hills keep it. In town, the changes came slow but sure. People started locking their doors, even in broad daylight. Trails that once led past Harper's land faded under overgrowth. Hunters crossed to the West Ridge instead, where the trees weren't so still, and children, even the bold ones, stopped telling stories about her cabin. Because deep down, they knew some stories weren't meant to entertain. They were warnings. Weeks passed. Spring came hesitantly, as if unsure whether it was safe to return. The snow pulled back from the hills like a curtain being drawn. The ground softened. Birds returned. But the air still carried the weight of what had happened, or what hadn't been spoken. One morning, Mason sat by the kitchen window watching fog drift across the tree line. His hands rested on the table, fingers still bruised from healing. "Did they get what they deserved?" he asked quietly. Harper, standing by the stove, didn't answer right away. She looked outside, her eyes scanning the treetops where the last frost was melting in long silver streaks. "No," she said finally, her voice like earth beneath snow, solid, heavy, real. "They got what they earned." And though no court would record the truth, no reporter would print it, no official would dare investigate it, the town remembered, not in words, not in books, but in the way dusk crept faster over Harper's Ridge, in the hush that fell when her name came up in conversation, in the way wolves were heard howling again, not in fear, but in recognition. Because some truths run deeper than law. Some lines, once crossed, don't offer a path back. Even a mother wolf has her threshold, and when that line is broken, she doesn't roar, she doesn't plead, she bites, and sometimes the most dangerous creature in the woods is the one who built the fence, not to keep others out, but to hold herself back.